Well, I think the most important piece of information that we can take away from Sweden is that even without the lockdowns, the catastrophic consequences that came from the prediction models are simply not happening.
Right. And I want to remind people that when the epidemiologist in Sweden says, this is a relationship we have between the government and the people and we all trust each other, that was already happening here in the United States. People were already adjusting. They were already acting on the incentives and constraints themselves. Of sporting events were being canceled. People weren't going out to restaurants as much. People were already doing this stuff on their own. So the real question here is, and what we're trying to look for in the data is on the margins. We had the lockdowns here. So the lockdowns minus what people were already doing, for example, what they're doing in Sweden, was it worth, inflicting like a self-inflicted Great Depression with 30 million people out of work? And that's what the data is really going to show. And that's why Sweden's become such a hot point here. It's because, there's a lot of people's reputations on the line. Look, Neil Ferguson, his reputation's been on the line. I don't know how it's not been destroyed. We're still kind of implementing policies off of his failed models. I mean, unbelievably failed models. So I don't know how much change this is going to make. I don't think it at this point. I don't think it matters. I think there's people just trying to save face and go along with what they've already tried. And I don't think they care so much about the immense costs. There's people that are hurting very badly, and all we're talking about constantly is social distance, stay away from each other, while people can't feed their families. It's disturbing.
It is disturbing. So let me ask you this, because Pete, you're right. People will look to Sweden, and regardless of which side, pro-lockdown or lockdown skeptic, they will see the information that they want to see. They'll draw the conclusions that they want to draw. But let me ask you, comparing Sweden to its Nordic neighbors, saying, well, Sweden's fatality rate is a lot higher than Denmark and Norway and Finland. Is that a fair comparison?
No, and any epidemiologist will tell you, and this is what Sweden is doing now. We just tried to flatten the curve again, and I've said this on your show so many times. You cannot stop a virus. A government cannot stop a virus. We know the flu virus is coming every year, yet we cannot stop it. So what you have is you can either have an initial spike and then it comes down and that's all you have, or you can flatten the curve and prolong it. So what the epidemiologist in Sweden is saying, look, we are going to have an initial spike, but it's not going to last as long here. While Norway is going to it's going to continue and continue and continue, much like it's going to in the United States. At the end of the day, the numbers are going to look the same everywhere. This is the same virus everywhere. What happened in Sweden was this is a pernicious virus for older people, people with underlying conditions. Viral loads matter. Kids don't transmit the disease. Older people transmit the disease to kids. It largely doesn't bother kids to the degree the flu does. For older people, it's worse than the flu. That's how this works. The data is in on this. The data is also in on, are the lockdowns working? Florida had a much later lockdown. New York had a much earlier one. Florida has less of a problem. New York has more of a problem. So it's really, perhaps we shouldn't be looking at the lockdowns and social distancing in as much as there are other factors that could perhaps contribute to this.